the so-called developing world were suffering most and were least able to cope. And the time factor, long as well as short term, greatly added to the complexity of the problems we now face. For the international community as a whole, the first problem then became how to measure the damage being done to the Earth's atmosphere, how the costs might be agreed within a global framework, and what effect all this might have on human rights as defined in numerous agreements, beginning, of course, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Next came a huge range of associated problems, some accurate assessments of the impacts of climate change to the defects of conventional economics and the need to work out new and fairer methods of measuring human health, wealth, and welfare was the second. And issues of human rights raised such fundamental questions as whether other organisms had rights in the human sense of the word. Were human rights consistent, or were they against the rights of other creatures? Does life itself have a right to exist? These big, difficult questions have been raised, and of course they've not so far, and probably won't be, fully answered. Now, much of this goes far beyond the remits of this conference. But to look briefly at how changes now stand, particularly in climate, we've just had the scientific assessments of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and estimates based on models change all the time, and the complexities are immense. Of course, the debate will continue, and so it should. But looking at the long past as well as the fluctuating present, there is little serious doubt about the main and accelerating effects of the human impact on climate, hence the Anthropocene, arising from the steadily increasing quantities of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Broad responsibility for human-induced climate change rests unequivocally upon those who have in multiple ways, albeit unwittingly, changed conditions on the surface of the Earth. As the title of a recent book put it, something new under the sun. Well, first I just have a word about institutions. The horrors of 2 world wars and in the treatment of individuals have led to the creation of many world bodies, declaration of global principle and treaties of various kinds so far unknown in human history. When, as you've heard, I was ambassador to the United Nations, I had a lot to do with all this. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which established that human rights should be protected by the rule of law, and a Human Rights Council within the United Nations framework. We have a European Court of Human Rights, with which Britain has a somewhat testy relationship. We have the Mary Robinson Foundation, of which you've heard, called Climate Justice with an International Advisory Council, of which I am a member. At least there is now, then we have, of course, the International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute, whose work I much respect. At least there is now widespread acceptance of the rule of law, and this was well expressed at high-level meetings of the United Nations General Assembly in September this year, and indeed in September last year. The declaration then laid out that the rule of law was indispensable in 3 main areas: maintaining peace and security, which has been my particular thing,